Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. We have one of the most mysterious, magical guests on that we've had in a long time. We did a show with her earlier, many years ago. Her name is Betty Sue Flowers. She is not only an incredible rainmaker and a change agent, an editor, an author, a facilitator, but she's one of the kindest, most powerful human beings I've ever met, with elegance and grace like very few people have had a chance to interface with. Betty Sue is the former director of the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library and Museum and a former emeritus professor of English at the University of Texas at Austin. She is the author of many books and an editor of many books, some of which are Bill Moyers, Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, A World of Ideas, Healing in the Mind, and Genesis in the Modern Traditions. She's published 3 books on poetry for Shields of Power, Extending the Shade, and Blue Lioness. She was a consultant for a nationally televised series, The Power of Myth, and a host of a radio series, The Next 200 Years. She had a 10-part television series called Conversations with Betty Sue Flowers that was aired on an Austin PBS affiliate, KLRU. She's been a consultant for NASA, a member of the Envisioning Network for General Motors. I could go on and on. This woman is also a visiting advisor to the Secretary of the Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, the return of the marvelous and wonderful Betty Sue Flowers. Welcome to It's Rainmaking Time.
Well, thank you, Kim, and thanks for that marvelous introduction. I think my mother may have even believed it.
You have impacted so many people, and when I met you many years ago, I was in touch with something about you that I've long tried to explain, which was that you're a rainmaker, but very few people would probably refer to you as the titles and things that you've done, like even in this introduction, in order to pave the way and open the space for people to receive you. We introduce that, but that doesn't really touch the human being that you are and the kind of contribution you make and the way in which you touch and move people's lives. So really, my interest in this dialogue today is to talk about magic, creativity, the heart, and the spirit, and how come you're so good at working with that in people from every domain in the world, from the highest levels of power to students coming in trying to find out who they are. What is it about you that's at work that you open a space and turn people on to who they are and what they're about? What is it?
Well, Kim, the space is already there. You just have to walk into it. It doesn't really have to do with me. I don't create it. It's there all the time. So really the issue is, if you know that the space is there, what prevents us from being aware of it? So if you've thought about it, really I guess I'm in the job of barrier removal.
It's a lot more than that. You get people in very high places to get in touch with the childlike spirit in them and the magician in them. You, to me, are a kind of midwife, almost. You midwife the magician, the magic in others that's indwelling in them. Does that make sense to you?
It does, although I wouldn't lay claim to that. I just think that that kind of, well, you call it magic, and that's as good a term as any. That kind of magic is lying all around us. And we tend to think that the world is not created for anything but discipline, pain, suffering, struggle. And there's plenty of that in life, but there's also this other side to it where it's dancing with us. And when you can get in touch with that, life becomes a rather marvelous journey.
You've done a lot of things in your life, from raising children, being in marriage for a long time, traveling the world. You've led a very unusual life where you have been dancing in many arenas. How have you been able to do it, seriously?
Well, again, back to the theme of barrier removal, a lot of things are easier if you're not involved in the stress of them. So if you're stress-free, that frees up a huge amount of energy. So what allows someone to do more than it might be thought would be normal is this no stress.
How is it that you create it to be stress-free? How have you done it?
Well, one of the things that causes stress is the story we tell about the future. if you think about it, stress is worry about what may or may not happen. And if you're living fully in the present, you can't be telling a story about the future all the time. And hence, a lot of stress is removed. There's usually a lot of good stuff happening in the present if you can only be awake to see it. And the bad stuff, a lot of it is in the past and the future. After all, the present's really quite small. It's just now.
It's the gateway to everything, isn't it?
That's right. So it's if you think of the difference between immortality and eternity, immortality is lasting a long time. Eternity is no time at all. And
right.
So the present is a time of no time. And if you're not dwelling on the past or the future, you can really appreciate the things that are going on in the present. And there's usually a lot of beauty and love available in the present, which isn't available when we're stressing out, worrying about, making up stories about the future.
Somewhere in the writings about you, and I noticed there's a lot of writings about you on Google and from all over the place, but you don't have your own website, which I also find a mystery. It's like she's there, but she's not. She's there, but she's not.
Maybe I'll do one of these days, but at the moment, there's no reason to, actually. I mean, I'm not trying to sell anything, or so there's really no reason to have a website. I'm on Facebook, but there's not much of me on Facebook. I just say yes to people asking to be my friend if I know them. So that's about it.
Do you think they know what they're getting into?
Oh, well, yeah, because, you go back to you. Your experience came about because of what was already inside you to ask for. So it has nothing to do with me, really. It has to do with the person who's asking.
Well, thank you very much. You're very humble. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. There's an article on WebSpace at utexas.edu called Madman, Architect, Carpenter, Judge, Roles, and the Writing Process by Betty Sue Flowers. And I read that, and I thought, what a great way to help people with writing. I'm also a writer. There are so many people that write and love writing and have something to say. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
Well, I came up with this idea because when I would talk with students, they were getting all balled up in the writing process really because they mixed up the roles. They'd have the judge. They'd be judging it before they'd even gotten anything down on paper. And if you have a judge looking over your shoulder, you can't really be creative. It's the way children play when grown-ups aren't around. So when you first start writing, you have to play as if grown-ups aren't around. I call that the madman phase. And then once you've produced a bunch of stuff, you can look at it, see what's there, and usually there's more in us than we usually think of at the moment. But you look at what you've produced, and you begin to sort it out and make it into something. That's the architect phase, see what's there, maybe even outline it. Carpenter phase, you put the sentences together, and then the judge, the fourth phase, you look to see what you've done and judge it, clean it up. And so the reason I divided the writing process into these four roles was to make it easier and, back to our earlier theme, less stressful.
Did you find as a teacher that was helping students right away start to be able to just download and flow?
Yes, it helped those who actually trusted it enough to try it. It's very difficult for many students to get the judge out of their heads. So for some, it was such a process, a difficult process, that they would give up on it. But I would come back to them and say, this has something to do with the rest of your life, not just writing.
That's very wise. There's another piece of writing where you said, I'm paraphrasing, something having to do with the dragon that's in the way of your success.
Yes, I did a little series of pieces on the dragons guarding different gates. And the dragon that guards the gate of success is really fear.
Talk about that.
Part of what hinders us is a fear of failure. But if you're following your own path, there's no such thing as either success or failure.